Hello and welcome to Drunk Game Retellings. As always, I'm your host, Jack. Today we'll be joined by my special guest, Steve, who will be retelling the plot of Okami while drunk. Just to introduce the game was originally released on the PlayStation 2 back in 2006 by Clover Studios, which in a year later would close down and would later reform to become the popular Platinum Games. But this game would later be ported to the Nintendo Wii, which my friend Steve played, and the PlayStation 3, which I played. And so, without further ado, I'll have my friend Steve talk about the game while drunk, and then both of us, while tipsy, will discuss the game and its legacy in a little segment called Tipsy Talk. So, take it away, Steve.
Hi, this is Steven. I'll be doing a retelling of Okami by Capcom and Clover Studios. It was originally released in 2000, I believe, 6 for the PlayStation 2, but I'll be more talking about the Wii version, which is the version I played that came out about a year later, I think. So Okami is a Zelda clone, probably the best Zelda clone, and I do mean Zelda clone in a very loving way. It's an adventure game with a very open world that you gain more and more access to with new powers and abilities that you get from dungeons or quests. Um, the gameplay is, standard. If you played any Platinum Studios, Clover Studios actually after this game was disbanded by Capcom, became Platinum Studios. If you've played any Platinum games, the gameplay and combat is very similar to that, but it's the main gimmick, I should say, is you have a paintbrush that you hit a button and a piece of parchment basically goes over the screen and pauses, and you can draw whatever shape and uh, design for really any spells of this game. Um, and this is some of the things I like about this. This is one of the best games for an implementation of art style and gameplay, like game art affecting the game as well as the gameplay. And so you have that sort of like really great brush technique. It's the style of Japanese like brush painting and like that art style of when you think classic Japanese art, that style is the art style, and so the paintbrush technique really fits the gameplay and the theme of feudal and ancient Japan really. Um, so the big difference between the PlayStation 2 and the Wii is the PlayStation 2 has more traditional color scheme to what that color scheme would look like if it were, a Japanese painting come to life. The Wii, though, has a more vibrant color scheme, which is less traditional, but honestly, that's kind of what I preferred. I'm a huge fan of the vibrant colors, and from what I've been told, is the Wii actually has, even though the paintbrush does kind of wig out sometimes and doesn't register certain brush strokes, it's overall better than the PS2's analog brush technique. So I think it really, if the art style is really what you're craving for the more realistic, go for the PS2. But I would say that Wii has a superior control and art. I like the vibrancy. It did come out for the PS3. I don't know which art style it chooses, but I would strongly recommend it picking up for whatever you have available. But getting started, so your character is Amaterasu, the sun goddess. It is a female character, which is definitely nice to see in video games. They use female pronouns. It's pretty nice, actually. It's not super like female, and if you played any of the Platinum games, sometimes you can understand why that's a big thing with their how they treat their female characters. But it's nice. You do have your Navi character, a little guy named Inshin who's trying to learn your brush techniques and be a great Japanese artist master. But you actually start the game being reborn with none of your powers. You do gain the power of the sun very quickly, and just the ability to use the celestial brush. Like, you being the sun god, it does make sense. You get the sun power first, but you come into the world with very little power. The humans and the animals don't really believe in you anymore, and very recently, an ancient demon named Ochi or Rochi, eight-headed snake dude is coming back, and he eats a maiden every year from this village, and there's only like 8 people in this village, so give him a little bit and he's gonna run out of maidens very quickly and people in general. um, But that being said, you're like, I gotta go save this person and make sure they don't get killed. And thus starts your quest. And the thing that you have to learn very quickly about this game is your quests are not very simple in the sense of, oh, I have to stop the demon. Well, before you stop the demon, you have to go to some other village, but before you get to that village, you have to go purify something and do something else. So it's very back and forth, but it's nice in the sense that you don't feel like you're backtracking a ton, and you still feel like you're making progress, even though if you do feel like you have to do a lot before you get to what you need to do. So you start out in the village. You sort of endear yourself by helping a couple of the villagers. Like you draw the sun in the sky, and it dries the clothes of a woman, and she's, oh, I'm grateful, and gives you praise. And this is the main way that you play this game, is by gaining praise. It's your XP, and it's basically how much the world believes in you. Lets you get more ink pots so you can draw more without running out of ink. It gives you more health, lets you carry more money, refills your essentially live system. But you start the game. Essentially, you have to purify the valley before you can fight the dude that's terrorizing this village. And you purify the valley, but the temple is still sealed. Your main purification tool is you draw a circle around trees, and it all becomes beautiful, and it's very Hayao Miyazaki and save the environment kind of way. Um, but once you've done that, and the nice thing about doing this, it's kind of almost reminds me of like Assassin's Creed, where once you've purified an area, you get more access to more side quests and missions and things you can do in the area. So it does a good job of opening up the world bit by bit and allowing you to do more of these. So you can do all the side quests once you open up the world or that area, uh, if you want, or you can continue with the storyline and maybe come back. Some of the things, of course, you do have to wait to do, but there is a nice balance of like, once you get there, being able to do things, coming back maybe a little bit later, and then coming back maybe even close near to the end of the game and still have things to do in that area. The next area you go to is a forest area. It's really cool water stuff. It's also the one area that really the game, like the controls, got to me, because there's a little side quest you can do with one of the bears, or a bear, I should say. You be like standing on round objects, and you can roll him three different round objects. And I remember one of the round objects, like a tumbleweed or giant Brussels sprout was one of them. I had so much trouble pushing it up this hill. Like, just I was like, maybe I'm missing an element to this. Maybe I should come back with like a different power or something. But it was just like, I was like, clearly something I'm missing. But the big thing in that area is this little boy's like, my dog is missing, and you go to essentially the wood or forest temple of the area, and you do your first big level, and you fight this incredibly designed Spider Queen boss, and it's really cool. You have a vine power, so you can hook onto the hooks on her abdomen, and peel back the abdomen to reveal these like creepy eyes, and slash them up with your powers. Some of the powers you have at this point are, you can draw a lily on water that allows you to traverse water. You can slash, just draw a line, cut most things. Bombs, and the sun, I think, is the big one, and then you get the vine power. So you use those to attack mainly. Let's see, after you defeat the Spider Queen, you can cross over to the mountainous area. I remember this is the first area that has tigers in it that you can feed for praise. If you find animals, you can feed them like seeds or herbs or fish or meat, and they give you praise, and that's always a little cute side thing. I remember this one had tigers in it, so that was really cool. And again, it's one of those things where you're like, okay, I need to break this seal in order to fight the big bad guy. Let me go talk to this woman. This village is supposed to help me. Oh wait, the village is cursed. I have to help the woman in the village. So before you can even talk to the woman, you have to go break the curse in the village, which is its own little side quest. And then she's like, oh, I need my dogs to help me open the temple that's cursed the main village. And you're like, okay, well, let me find the dogs. You find some of them, and then I think like three of them are dogs you've met throughout the game already. Like the boy's dog you have to save, he's one of them. One of the ones in the village that you start out in is one of the sacred guardians. They're like, no, we can't leave our masters. You have to defeat us. And up until this point, the gameplay or combat is relatively basic. It's kind of easy, to be perfectly honest, but it's very short. and there's enough like little extra things you can do with your brush techniques to get like extra items um, that make it interesting enough that it's not really become boring or anything. But the dogs are the first one where it's like actually kind of a challenge. Like you're using your health items and you're kind of like, oh, well, this is actually kind of a struggle. Um, but once you beat them, they deem you worthy, bestow their power onto you, and once you've got all three, you go back to the woman, and she's like, okay, great, I can open up the temple and you can defeat whatever inside, and then I'll be able to help you. So you go inside and you essentially help the woman defeat whatever evil's inside him. We get the wind powers, the Gale Shrine, so the wind temple, I guess, and you get your Gale powers, and that's good for puzzles and also opens up new areas, and it's all fun. And then so you do that, and you're like, oh my goodness, I've done it. And of course, you can do whatever side missions you want once you've done that, and then you go back to the main city that you started out in for the festival where the eight-headed snake is going to come get the person, and this swordsman that initially unlocks him in the first place. You're not supposed to know that, but it's the silhouette's obvious. It's not a huge deal. So he disguises as the woman, takes her magic sake that you're supposed to use to help defeat the boss, and he rides you to battle. And you fight this eight demon snake. And most of these bosses and enemies are really fun because there's not a huge amount of like waiting on a pattern, like enemy attack pattern, and then you do X to win, and you have to repeat it several times. And this is the first one where it's like really kind of tedious. It's fun because each of the snake heads does a different move that you have to do something different for, but it still takes you multiple rounds of following the pattern for each head, and there's eight heads. And I'll get to why this might, it seems like I might be complaining about this, but I'll get to that in a little bit because he comes back up again and you have to fight him again in the exact same way. So you basically do it twice, and that's why it seems kind of repetitive. But you beat him, and you're like, oh, great, maybe I beat the game. This is a really short game. It's like, oh no, his cursed power comes out, and uh, there's something further north. So you go to a new area, a new section of the game. It's called, actually, Ryoshima Coast. So it's sort of like the water area, and you go to the main city of the game. It's a huge city. There's tons of side quests, but it's struck in by this blight, and you have to figure out what's causing everyone to be sick and what's affecting everything. Like there's trees that you can try and bloom, beautiful cherry trees you can try and bloom, but if you bloom them while the city's under blight, they just die. So you have to figure out what's going on, but you can't get inside the main area where it's coming from, the Imperial Palace. So you have to go out onto the coast and retrieve a thing that will shrink you from the sunken ship, and there's a priestess lady helping you do this because she's concerned. And this is probably the creepiest section of the game. The sunken ship has got like some demon Japanese horror shit going on, and it's definitely the eeriest part. But you also get your moon power finally that turns it day to night. Because you can do night to day, but there's like hidden treasures and certain extra things you can only do at night. And before you get this power, you're just sort of like waiting for night to fall, and you're like, okay, yeah, maybe, all right, now I have a limited time to do this. I can't revitalize night. Um, but once you get your little shrinky item, you can go in to the Emperor's Palace and figure out what's going on, and you get the coolest power there, which is the one that slows time, because it's so helpful against so many enemies and bosses, just to be like, yo, chillax a little bit, let me like position myself, figure out what's going on. It's definitely one of the more useful ones. You go inside the Emperor. Yeah, you go inside the Emperor and fight Blight. And I remember fighting him for the first time, and he was the first like really hard boss for sure. Like super difficult. Like you had to make sure you knew like how to counter him. Um, and I was like, oh, well, we're gonna fight the other Horseman of the Apocalypse, right? Which you don't. It's just Blight. But he was a fun boss, really cool design, like a samurai armor with a ton of swords stuck in him with the one cursed one. You had to focus the cursed sword. Um, but you cure the Emperor and you fix the city. Then, of course, now you have to deal with something else where there's a dragon terrorizing the coast. So if you jump into the ocean and you're swimming around or you're on a lily pad, it's like Banjo-Kazooie where the shark comes out and he's like, I'm going to get you, but it's this water dragon that comes out of nowhere and just will chomp you. So you go fight the water dragon, and he reveals he's this dragon king, and he was tricked by the nine-tailed fox or QB, and it turned him mad, and you have to go stop him, and you find out that the priestess you've been trusting was actually been dead for a while, and QB stole her body and is using it for his own nefarious devices, and is wreaking havoc. So you have to go fight QB on like the Demon Island, and so you go, and you get a new power there. I think you get maybe thunder. You get on that one. That's a cool one. And you fight QB, and the cool thing about this design is the bosses are always phenomenal, but with this boss, and you see this if you play any other Platinum Studios games after this, it's the boss that's like you. And then when you play a Platinum game, the best bosses in my opinion are the bosses that are like you. And Bayonetta, it's John, or the Lumen Sage, and in Wonderful 101, it's like Prince Vorkin. It's the bosses that play like you, and that's what QB does, is he plays like you. So if you pause the game to draw your Celestial Brush technique, he'll also draw on your parchment, and he'll make bombs, or he'll do the slash move, things like that. And so there's actually like a pressure of like, oh, I can't just pause the game, draw whatever I want. It's no, you have to make sure you are doing it right, so he doesn't have time to draw and basically damage you. So it was a really interesting, fun boss fight, and that's sort of the end of that area. Um, I am leaving quite a bit out because there's a lot of, you go to the main city, but before you can progress in the main city, you have to go outside the city to go solve something. Then you go back to the city, then they're like, oh, no, you need to go here to progress even further. So, again, when you look back on it, you're like, wow, I had to do a lot of extra stuff. But in game, it's super fun. It's new areas, it's new things with new powers. And again, like, the puzzles aren't tedious. The fighting isn't tedious, and you can really kind of avoid it most times if you don't really feel like doing it. But once you've done that, you've sort of completed that section of the game, and the next thing would be to go north. It's where the demons go and the demons move, and it's this iced area. It's really cool. It does have one of the more annoying normal enemies to fight, which is this stupid turtle thing. You have to wait for it to. It's an igloo turtle, and you have to wait for it to light its tail on fire, and then you can draw from the fire to the igloo and melt it. And once you've done that, you can basically just melt the igloo. And they actually, Snorunt the Pokemon, there's like one of those inside, and you can basically just do that and burn it alive, and it's a demon thing, but it takes forever to deal with. So you're in the northern area. It's exciting. Let's see. So you meet the tribe of people that can turn into like wolves and dogs, and they're really cool. I love their design, and they're being attacked by these really interesting boss designs of these clockwork owls. One's silver, one's gold, and one of them has a more analog clock design, and the other one's got more of like a digital clock design. But really interesting style, and they're really fun to fight. Of course, before you can fight them, you have to travel to your little fairy dude's village, where you get a little more backstory on him. And then you can travel to the area where they are and fight them, and go through the tower, of course, and the level. And then once you get to fight them in the end, and once you defeat them, it reveals that all these evils have been coming from this ark that crash landed in the north. And one of the moon people that was driving it, he's been appearing throughout your journey. He reveals the backstory of how they were trying to escape from the moon and going through the celestial plane, and then a demon broke loose and attacked them on the ship, and they crash landed, and the evils escaped, thus releasing the demons into the world. And and then it's like, we'll go into the ark and fight the demon, and they are like, hey, by the way, this is the point in the game where you can't turn back. So if you want to do any side questing, go do side questing, and this is where you can go do all your side quests. actually forget this, and I remember when I was going over the story, like what I was gonna say, I forget where it comes up every time. Because at some point you go back 100 years, and it's like almost like when you talk about it, it sounds like this should be a side quest, but just at some point in the game, you go back 100 years and fight the eight-headed snake dude again as like the original story, and it's like cool for storytelling, but as far as gameplay, it's like why are we doing this? Why it's certainly like it's one of those things where it's just like if this game was like made today, it's just or got a chance they got a chance to redo it. This game, that section would be completely changed or taken out just because it's so irrelevant to everything in the entire game. It really is. Which this is such a detailed description of this game, you know. But yeah, so you can do your side quests. One of the big side quest things is these boss gates where it's like fight 10 different layers of enemies. The way combat works in this game is when combat isn't like a normal like Zelda thing where you run to the enemies. It's more like something like almost like the Tales series where it's a random encounter but not really random. Like you see where the enemies are on the map and you can choose to engage or not. And so it's like 10 layers of that. And it starts out like the first two are super easy and you're like, yeah, this is totally doable. And they start like bringing in the boss fights and you're like, okay, like getting a little difficult now, like having some trouble. But yeah, so I remember saving those for really near the end. Um, and yeah, and then once you go onto the arc, you fight Yami, which is the final boss, and it reminds me if you've ever played Bayonetta, the golem that's like the multiple little like cubes or Wonderful 101, that one enemy that's like made up of cubes, sort of like that, and he like takes your powers, and you have to like get each power back as you play the, against the boss and use those powers to help defeat him. And so it's a nice climactic thing of like what you've learned. And that's where the end of the game, and you get some like new game plus content. Um, there's some other comments about the game is it's such an incredible experience to play through it. And there's so many games nowadays that are like, it's an experience, and it really feels like an experience more so than a game. But this one, if you don't play through it, I almost would recommend just watching, like, not a walkthrough where someone's talking, but like a playthrough of someone playing through it, just to watch it. Now, of course, I would recommend you play through it because I'd say the most negative critiques I have really were the extended boss fight where you do it again, go back in time, do that again, rolling the stupid thing up the hill for the bear, and then there's one digging mini game comes up 3 times in the game, and it's so annoying. But other than that, everything is just really satisfying. There's a nice progression of your expansion of the world and what you can do, and sort of how powerful you feel as a god. And it's a really nice gameplay story sort of combination where as you get more praise and more power as a god, you feel more powerful as the player, as in enemies seem to get easier. You're more comfortable playing, using all your powers, and it's nice. And there's not really many games like that combine artistic direction with gameplay so well, in the sense that if you were to change what type of game this was and what the story was, it would dramatically affect how good the art style and the gameplay was. And if you change the gameplay, it would change that as well. If you change the art style, like they were really wanted to do a realistic art style in the beginning, and it just would not be the game it was today if they went with that. But it's, to quote Garnet, it's an experience. And I highly recommend getting it cheap for the Wii or the PS2 or getting it on the PS3 and just sort of playing through it. Maybe not worry about 100% mode, even though it actually is kind of easy to get 100% in the first playthrough because they kind of give you a good sort of feel of, oh, you've gotten these items from this area, you're missing one. In fact, there's only one missable thing in the whole game, and that's when you're going back in time. But it's just an incredible game to play through and sort of experience. There's nothing like it. even the other Platinum games, you'll play if you play this after them, or you play them after this, you'll know where all these sort of little elements that keep popping up in their games came from. But there hasn't been a game to date, even all the Zelda games, that has compared to this one in terms of like how I felt playing it. It's definitely one of my top 5 games of all time, for sure.
Hello, this is Jack once again for Tipsy Talk, and with me is my friend Steve.
Hi, this is Steve.
Hey, Steve, how are you doing?
Doing well. Got my drink right here. Just
What?
had dinner. So
Oh,
excited.
just had dinner.
Yeah,
Same here. What drink are you having tonight?
classic rum and coke. Very basic.
That
Didn't
is
feel like doing anything fancier, so
now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is it that's the same drink you used for your drunk retelling of Okami? Is that correct?
actually that is it is, but
Oh my goodness!
it's
Call back.
except that was uh good rum and actual coke, and this is store brand generic coke and like off brand rum.
So
So
what's the off-brand Coke where you are?
Harris Teeter, which is actually owned by Kroger, which I found out.
Really? That's it. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm really only familiar with the off-brand Dr. Peppers. Really,
The
it's
Dr. Thunder. This is just cola.
yeah, it's just cola. I
Yeah.
mean, it has such a cool name and yet just falls flat. Unlike Okami, which is has a cool name and it does not fall flat. It lands on all 4 feet. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
So
I'm
kind of
glad you liked it. I'm really glad you liked it.
yeah, I'm really liking it. For listeners at home, Steve, when he recommended me to do the episode on Okami, I had not actually played Okami before. So for the kind of leading up to this, this conversation now and during this recording, I've been playing Okami for a large period of time. I've put in almost 20 hours into it. It's been a wonderful game, but I'm not here to talk about me. This is a conversation. So first
Well,
off,
20 hours actually gets you pretty far into the game, especially if you're not like super grinding on some of the side quests. If you're like not having trouble like getting them done and you're just playing the storyline, straight up, you'll get you pretty far into the game.
mm-hmm, yeah, I'm pretty good at video games. I don't know. But anyway, so starting off, when did you first play Okami?
God, I want to say back in high school, I think my brother played it first for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I played it after. You know what? You know what? Here's a good reference point. I remember that "I Kissed a Girl" was really popular at the time
Oh,
because I remember listening to that while playing Okami.
so listeners at home, just type in "I kissed a girl I liked" and maybe listen to
Katy
it.
Perry, Katy Perry, yeah,
The artist Katy Perry. You may not know her. She's kind of a small time artist.
yeah. It never really went anywhere.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard anything. What I don't know what she's in anymore. So just do that. Rate whatever videos on YouTube. Her songs are 5 stars, and then you'll know. But yeah, so your brother played it, and then you played it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I like completely fell in love with the game. I thought the art style was phenomenal. Admittedly, the combat was fun. Like I liked being able to counter people with the rosary beads and like slamming, like suplexing them into the ground. Like that was always my favorite power in Kirby.
Right.
So being able to essentially do that in this was really fun. Um, and I just thought it was like a really unique experience that like while it was definitely taking inspiration from other games, I felt like I hadn't played anything like it before.
Now, was when you got it from your brother, was that really the first time you heard of Okami, or have you heard?
Yeah, I didn't know about it, and then he said that this was like if you liked Zelda, you would like this game, and he got it and he loved it, and I like saw him play some of it, and I thought it looked really cool, and so I played it and
fell in love.
And so that was just to clarify. You were playing the Wii version, correct?
Yeah, we had the Wii version.
That's right. And I've been playing it on the PS3 version. And you said that at least the art style of it looks similar to the Wii
I
version.
think so, and I haven't seen too much of the PS2 art style. Most of it was screenshots, so I could be somewhat wrong on that. But I
Mm-hmm.
believe that the PS2, at least from also what my friend said who played it on the PS2, he said that the colors were a little bit more like faded, and
Yeah.
they weren't as vibrant as on the Wii. But that's more like traditional to the art style that it was emulating.
Mm-hmm. I remember when I first did Okami. This was back. This is another episode of me just talking about my experience with Game Informer. That it was during the Game Informer. I don't know if they do this anymore. They used to do a thing where at the end of the year they would have like awards, and they would have like a bunch of top 10 lists, like you'd see a decade later on BuzzFeed. And one of them was like top
Yeah.
10 biggest bad guys of gaming, and like one of the highest ones was just listed you, and it says because you didn't buy Okami and it didn't sell well. And I just remember at the time being like, what the heck?
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that yeah, I kind of like though, like no one bought it, they didn't know what it was, no one thought it would be like, like how do you market it though, like to an American audience, like if you
Yeah,
like anime but it's not really anime, like
it kind of came out before sort of the anime craze. I feel like, at least when I'm trying to think, when I think back to
I played it probably during the anime craze,
yeah,
but it
you
definitely
at
came
least
out
the
before.
Wii version, but specifically back
Yeah.
when Clover Studios existed,
Yeah.
when this game was out, I I don't really remember thinking about anime. Like when I was
Yeah.
watching Dragon Ball Z at that time, I just thought of it as just cartoon. I didn't really know what an anime was at that time, so I feel like that's partially. I feel like that's just a sad case of being just a little too early before people were more open to the idea of a Japanese product. But do you think maybe the at that time it being an exclusive item may have hampered with it?
Like being exclusive on the PS2.
It was for a while, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think it came out relatively early into the Wii's development, so it wasn't like because also the games that were popular on the Wii, I don't know if this would have fit into that niche. And this is such a niche game that it's hard to say that this would have been popular. It's one of those things though where it's like it wasn't popular. It's like the perfect cult classic where it wasn't popular at the time, but anytime like most anyone plays it, they're all like, "This is phenomenal. Why didn't I play this? Why didn't I know about this?" You know.
Yeah,
And I think again, if you've played, like you kind of mentioned this earlier, if you've played any platinum games since, you see all the elements of like where it sort of started.
but before we kind of head into sort of that direction, can you kind of tell me sort of the things that really makes you like Okami so much? Like what
Well,
when I was talking about this game, you've always kind of talked to me about how exciting it is to you. It's
yeah,
a special game to your heart. Can you kind of go more about just what about Okami just encaptures
yeah.
you so much?
I think the best thing is when you first purify the first area, and even sort of before that, you get that feeling of like you run out and you just start running, and there's just the entire like world to explore. You're like, what's over here? What's over there? Like, what am I gonna do now? Like, you just have like all this open space to just go around and figure out what you want to do, and like each little thing, and I kind of mentioned this when I talked about it, how like you really laying down, you're like, oh, I have to go to town B and talk to this person, but then before you do that there's like eight things you have to do in between, including a boss fight, like
Yeah,
and um just having like every person and place you encounter is like has their own personality, has their own interests, like interesting things, and like it's just super fun to go somewhere new because you're like, oh my god, what little like side quest am I going to get to do, or what's going to be in this area, and it's just so much fun running around and like doing all these little things, like catching the thief inside the big city, or like even if you're just like, I'm just gonna fish for the moon, like things like that, and it's just I have yet to play a game so like it. And like, I think about all the 3D Zeldas and all the fun like exploration stuff you do.
Yeah.
None of them have quite encapsulated in the same way that Okami did.
The way I kind of compare between Okami and say, I guess some of the I'm more experienced with the 3D Zeldas more so than the 2D ones,
Hmm.
but I'm always interested in how when Okami approaches puzzles, they try to make you think sort of it's very literal, but yet outside the box at the same time. Where it's just like, oh, yeah, we need more sunlight, so just make the sun, just draw like the sun in the sky. And whenever I think of like a puzzle in the Legend of Zelda, it usually involves putting something on a switch
Yeah.
or just pulling something somewhere. It's very physical, while Okami it's literal just it's just drawing. You're just kind of those images where they have like a you have a person on one side and like a piece of cake, there's like get the guy to the cake. Like how do
Yeah.
you make that little fill in the blank? And I feel like Okami is sort of is kind of like that. You just kind of you draw something to make the solution for you to get the cake.
Yeah. And I think also Okami has like a great sense of humor about itself.
Yes, it
Similar like something
does.
like maybe Wind Waker sort of had, where you've got this like really funny like Okami, even though she's a silent or Amaterasu, even though she's a silent protagonist, she like has her own little like, she gets exasperated, she gets frustrated, like,
Yeah,
you know, and I think all the side characters are just like, they have their own personality and their own like interests too. And I think the game sort of gives you that, like, while it's a linear game, really gives you that freedom to experience it how you want it to. And I agree with you that you do feel certainly more involved with creating the solution to a puzzle than just, oh, I pushed a block onto a switch.
exactly. And not just that, like the way kind of thinking about just kind of the Zelda comparison, I feel
Hmm.
like I get a lot more excitement from drawing a slash on a tree and cutting it down compared to like cutting grass, like mowing a lawn
Yeah.
in in Zelda. I can't think of a Zelda game that's really let me cut down a tree yet.
Oh, Skyward Sword, the smaller trees you can cut down. They're not
Uh,
like the huge ones you can in Okami, but
yeah, like no, it's
yeah. And
yeah,
this, I mean, but this also came out like 5, 6 years before Skyward Sword ever did. Oh no, Wind Waker does that too. You can cut down the little trees in
that's
Wind
right.
Waker.
Well, you cut the little trees, but Okami's like big tree,
Yeah, yeah, rocks,
big
everything,
rocks,
just cut it.
boulders.
And I think you've got more. I think Okami does the smart thing by letting you have the running mechanic very early on in the game. Like, you don't get Epona or stuff like that in, Zelda games. There's not like the quick travel-ish thing. And like with Okami, like the running mechanic is there from the get-go. You can
Yeah,
get to point A to point B relatively quickly. So,
and it makes logical sense, like how you run. You just keep running until you sprint. Yeah,
yeah.
it's just it's logical.
It's true, and then I really, so the only inconvenience is sort of like traveling on water, which is a great way of sort of being like, no, you can't do this yet until you get these powers or these items, and I think once you do get that sort of freedom, it's sort of like you've been far enough in the game where it's that just sort of conveniences you to be able to go to all the places that you need to go back to.
Plus, it just gave me like I feel like it was just easy to understand because I just think of like Pokemon logic. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
Sun God, weak against water, got it.
yeah, and then also like you couldn't use Surf immediately and get to Cinnabar Island
Oh
once you start the
no,
game. You have to wait a little bit.
yeah,
So
that's yeah. Okami is just basically Pokemon, folks. Just you get once you get the cut move, you can cut down stuff. It makes the game much
yeah, you
easier.
get cut, you get fly, you get Surf,
Yeah, and then
Rock
whatever.
Smash.
Oh, you get I guess Whirlwind. You get Whirl.
Yeah.
You basically get all the HMs that get you through situations or get you out of them. That's those are. Do you happen
Yeah.
to have a favorite power in Okami of the brush techniques?
I think my favorite is the slowdown time.
Mm-hmm.
because it's so. I mean, you don't use it like the puzzles you use it in are like super obvious and they're not the most creative puzzles. But like
Yeah.
as far as a combat spell, it is uh slow down time, so mist. And then as far as puzzles, I think wind is the most creatively used one. But
Yeah.
I have to say, now that I think about it, the best utility and combat is cut. It slash. It's so effective in everything.
Cut is so cool.
Yeah.
It really is. I'm kind of a fan of some of the elemental dragging powers,
Yeah.
like the fire one or water.
Have you gotten the advanced techniques for them yet? That was my question.
Oh, I don't think I've gotten those.
Yeah, because they give you the like utility ones, like oh flame, where you can like touch from fire and like draw fire or draw water or draw
Yeah.
thunder or draw ice. And eventually they give you advanced ones. They're sort of like side quests you can do,
Mm-hmm.
and they're more useful for like combat. Like you can draw like a giant snowflake or a fireball or a whirlwind, or you can make it rain. Like
Oh wow.
yeah,
That's because so far I've only been able to use it like for if like the wheel enemies, the ones that had like fire.
yeah, I like those guys a lot.
I just like going like, oh, you're fire ice. Whoop! It just
Yeah,
it reminded me like the of like early Kingdom Hearts one where you'd just shoot like the opposite magic and they'd freak out.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree. Those are like I like the aspect of like really bringing in the brush techniques more than just oh I slashed this enemy, you know. And it's
Yeah,
sort of like finding the weaknesses and being able to exploit them. That's one of the reasons I like the crane enemies with the hats as well and the samurai swords because it's
yeah.
not just oh I use the move on them. It's no I have to use certain moves on them in order to be successful.
I also like how they sometimes experiment with how you use some of the brush
Hmm.
techniques, like in the Moon Fortress, for example, when you're kind of thinking about how to access like the elevator once you drain the water. Like the immediate thought's like, oh, I have to cut the chains to make it go all the way down, but it took me a while to go through them all. Go, oh wait, I haven't just tried just cutting the guy and make him lose his grip.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Things like
It's
that.
it's sometimes it's the most obvious thing, and other times it's just oh I can just put a bomb on this platform and it'll like suck it up and it'll shoot up. That's it's
Yeah,
because I'm just used to like Zelda where the thing I use bomb for is to put it against the wall of the mark to
yeah.
go through. That's one thing I appreciate about that I keep saying it, but I really appreciate how it they really thought hard about how to really experiment with
Hmm.
this main mechanic. That is
Yeah.
something. Yeah,
No, I agree. I feel like while it is the gimmick of the game, it's used so integral to how the game like plays and the style of like the game, like the art style of the game, that if you were to remove it or change it, it just wouldn't work in the same way.
yeah.
You know,
It's
like the ink style works because you use ink, like a brush and ink.
and plus like it just and it completely justifies like the art style choice
Yeah.
as far as the brush things go. It just overall it's I feel like there's not really a problem with like you can describe it as a gimmick. Like it's for me, if there's a gameplay mechanic that works and that you can use as your backbone to your game, I don't think that's really considered a problem.
Yeah.
I think the only problem that can go with like making sort of a weird gameplay style is if it's not like 100% of the time works.
Yeah.
Like if it just kind of if it never really it's like when you're it's the difference like between like writing a C paper or a B or A paper. Like if you're doing
Hmm.
anything in academics, like a C paper is you did what's expected. I used the slash technique to cut the wire, to cut the thing. I attack the enemy. That's kind of expected, but what raises it above is like its ways of trying to think, oh, how else could I use cut? How else can I use win? How else can I use the bomb? It's I think it's just
Yeah.
them thinking more just how do we make this not repetitive, I think is what makes it more than just a gimmick and more into like a strong like gameplay mechanic.
Yeah, I agree. Um,
Yeah.
I think one of the things that do sadden me about this game, and I'm looking through just to refresh myself on like some of the enemy types, is how like basically the enemies. While it's nice that they do like a reskin, like when you go to different areas, most of the time the new enemies are essentially just the same. Like you fight them the exact same way,
Yeah.
but they're different.
I mean, I appreciated just the feeling once you like boost up your combos when you buy them and like boost up with the item to your combat weapons,
Yeah,
like to plow through them. It's really neat, but I think compared to other Clover slash Platinum Studio games or anything that Hideki Kamiya was involved in, it does seem weaker combat wise, but I almost feel like the combat's not the main draw of the game, which
yeah.
I find so interesting for a game with so many kind of Zelda influences and comparisons that it's not really the combat that is the most interesting part, but just really just the puzzle.
I
Like,
agree. I think
yeah,
if you notice, like very little of this game is combat compared to most of the other like Platinum games and Clover Studio games. That like yeah, you can fight the enemies, but most enemies, if you don't want to, you just avoid them. Like
yeah,
you
really,
don't really have to. There's no reason to really.
because there's no real like you don't get experience for anything. You don't get any. I mean, mostly all you get is you get money or you get the demon fangs if you do
Yeah.
like the cut the right way. You don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not really much difference in just. Also, there's no like. There, I mean, there's sort of a like a ranking system. You have the tree system of like of like a
Yeah, you and that factors into your end game score, like based on that, but the end game score isn't like a huge deal compared to like a Wonderful 101, where each little thing is, you got this ranking and at the end of the level you get this ranking.
yeah. Really, most of platinum games, to my knowledge, they all feature that system. They rank each individual like combat situation of the either if the game has its own like statue thing or grade, but yeah, I think even some of the Clover Studio games, I'm pretty sure Viewful Joe and God Hand had that system too, but Okami doesn't really focus on it. Like I don't really notice that. Like you don't get that in puzzles, for example. They don't grade you in how fast you figured out a puzzle.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't go. Should have used your brain, Einstein. Seed. Work
Yeah,
harder.
it's very true. I think it sort of goes with the whole like do what you want, go where you want, if you want to do a side quest, do a side quest. Otherwise, like, continue on with the main story.
Yeah, I did going sort of back a little bit back to the enemy like types.
Yes.
One, even though they sometimes recycle them, I do always appreciate the and this goes back to kind of the art direction, how they would stop like when they introduce them, they have that brief moment when they have like the hand drawn like old Japanese style.
Yeah.
Like I found that to be just really out of most of the enemy introductions in a lot of these merely mainly in platinum games. I can't quite remember this in Clover stuff, or at least having like an enemy having their intro ping. Because really, I think back to it like from Devil May Cry, which when Hideki Kamiya was involved in some fashion, but I feel like this is one of my absolute favorites just because of the amount of effort it took just to have like, oh, guy you kill, let's make it look just beautiful.
Yeah. I agree, and I mean, like, I like being able to go through near the end of the game when you fought like all the enemies and just like scroll through the hand drawn art and just see that. Like, I would love to have a poster of that of all the enemies and be able to hang that up. I think it's gorgeous.
I would love most of the art in general, like any of the
Yeah.
background art of just the
Oh yeah.
designing characters. That'd be if it. If they ever had. I don't know if they have an art book. I know. I feel
I
like
have
it'll.
to look.
Yeah, I don't. That's just the thing. This game, this game didn't sell that well, so
Oh yeah.
they
It's
probably
true.
didn't.
I was very surprised to see her in Marvel vs. Capcom 3.
Yeah,
I was like happy she was
yeah,
there,
her
but
and
like,
Beautiful Joe together. Like I was kind of happy and then also a little mad because it was just reminders of Capcom going, we closed down their studio, fuck you. No more sequel. Well, they did have the Okami sequel on the DS.
Yeah, I got to play a little bit of that. It was
What did you think
it's
of it?
like it's like, oh, if I want more Okami, I can play this. It's not as good, but if I am craving more and replaying Okami is not going to do it for me, I can play this.
Do you remember who developed that one? Because that
I think it was just Capcom. I'll have to
it
look.
was just Capcom. They didn't have like a.
Hmm.
That's interesting.
I don't think they did anything with it as far
Because
as like Clover Studios.
it's not like they went like, hey Platinum, can you become Clover again for a brief
Oh
moment?
yeah.
Yeah, no.
Okay, let's see. I'm pulling up the wiki now. Yeah, Capcom published it. It doesn't say anything specific about like who developed it.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably an in-house. Like they, if it's not
Yeah,
notable, then yeah, they
probably
probably.
done through Nintendo too. Because it was released on the DS. So,
Yeah.
which I think the DS would have been the system. Like if you're gonna release a handheld Okami, the DS is probably or the 3DS would be probably the system to do it on.
Oh yeah. I mean, or if they ever did like a Wii U version, that would have that would have
Oh,
been
very true, very true.
yeah, like any of the Nintendo focused like drawing systems, that would have been neat to see. I guess technically the Vita would have worked too if the
Yeah.
touchpad on the back of
I don't
it,
know if I
but
would have wanted to use my finger though. If you have to do a little bit of the finesse stuff like lightning bolt, you have to do some
yeah,
detail.
that's just the weird thing. I have no idea of the. I don't have a Vita, so I don't know if it has like a stylus or if it has a stylus
That's
support.
true.
If it did, that that would change everything. But to my knowledge, I'm not sure if it even has that. But I don't know if the But going back to Okami, let's let the Vita rest in
Yeah.
peace. Oh, I'm sad. I feel so sad about that comment. The Vita's still alive, folks. They just got Bastion. They got
Oh, yeah.
yeah
There you go.
they got Bastion. That's a game. There you go. But kind of thinking thinking more about Okami. Do you happen to have a favorite character from the game? Anyone stand out as your just
Hmm.
absolute
I
favorite?
mean, Amaterasu was like obviously my favorite. I identified with her the most. I think I really liked the queen in Seai City. If you've gotten that far, the major city,
Right.
I
Yeah.
thought she was cool. Sorry.
No, I said yeah. I know who she was. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought she was really cool. I also like. I don't think you've gotten to him yet. He's in the north where the snow is that turns into the wolf. You use him to fight the third area's main boss. I forget his name, but he's super awesome. I think it's like Kai or something. I liked him. I thought he was really cool.
Do you remember the who was the guy that was doing the was it Waka who was doing the prophecies? Oh yeah,
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 Waka's the
yeah.
prophet who's
I
your
originally
rival, sort of.
I originally thought that when I was trying to think of a voice for Waka when I think he said something in his first encounter like along the lines of like "Let's go, baby," and I thought for a moment that he was like the Beautiful Joe cameo of just how he talked. But it wasn't until he started talking and using like French slang when I was like, oh my god, Wonder Green's voice
Yeah,
is is
no.
is stuck in my head, and he has instantly lost all the cool points he could have possibly had.
He's a
I just imagine him now as the 15-year-old.
he's pretentious. That's his sort of thing. Is he's very like, oh, ho, ho, like the smell of his own farts. Is how I always imagined it.
He would have been much better if he was just constantly having a piece of food at all times and eating it.
Oh my god.
Just like Wonder Green. I really hope if Wonderful 102 ever gets made, like they just establish that connection. Just Wonder Green and Waka officially like that's their family line.
Oh
Like
my god, that'd be beautiful.
I mean that'd be beautiful. I mean I don't know. This was before we kind of talk about the kind of the platinum stuff. There's one thing I wanted to ask you. Recently, Hideki Kamiya he did like a poll about, hey, what games have I done beforehand? Would you like to have a sequel of? And he only had like on Twitter they have like a poll
Yeah.
system now where you could have like
Yeah, yeah,
two to
yeah.
four. He had I think at the time this was two, but he only wanted two, so he put down either between Beautiful Joe and Okami, and Okami won with the most
Hmm.
points. Would you want to see like a full on like Like
I
Okami 2, not really just like
That's
Okami
the
did.
thing. It's sad that I almost wish Okami Den was just more fun because like I think the storyline of Amaterasu has wrapped up so well, and you've already done so much. I don't know where you would go from here. It's one of those things where I would love to see it done well, but I'm scared that it won't.
So even
Just because I
so
don't
even
know
if
what you
like
would
the
do.
original devs like back on
Yeah.
it, you're
I would
not.
trust them to know what to do, but it's sort of like when they announced Bayonetta 2. I was like, how do you follow up Bayonetta 1? And I mean, I was very pleasantly surprised with Bayonetta 2, so I guess it can be done, but I want to see it, but I'm scared that it won't be what I want, but I shouldn't let that, factor into them making another game. I think I definitely would rather have it over Beautiful Joe, though, for sure.
Yeah. If would you rather have like a full on remake over a sequel, or would you?
Ooh. I think the game pretty much kind of ages pretty well. I mean, I would love to see a more incorporation of like a tablet, like you can draw like on the Wii U style, but the combat of like the PS3.
So would you rather see it like on the Wii, or would you rather like wait for like the NX or even like a
I
multi?
don't know. I want to know what features the NX is going to have that would, because if the NX doesn't have any sort of like tablet or like motion controls, I mean, I saw, you play a little bit on the PS3 and it looked like just doing some of the controls on the, joystick and stuff like that is not really as intuitive as it could be.
I mean, I've since then I've been getting better at it. I
Yeah.
think it's sometimes when you're just doing. I haven't really used the sun more often in puzzles compared to a
Hmm.
lot of the other stuff. Like it was really weird how doing the bomb was a lot easier than just doing just a circle. And
Yeah.
just for everything else just felt very easy for me as far as drawing things. But I'd be interested to see if they chose on the PS4 like or honestly, I would really just prefer if they did multi-platform, just to allow more people a chance to like play an Okami type game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's always what I want. I want more people to have a chance to play good games. So, I mean that'd be great to see, or maybe a PC version, have full MOS support. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's be careful there. But that'd be interesting to see if they did like a sequel, a spiritual sequel, a remake, whatever the case. I'd be into it.
Yeah.
I like Okami. Even though I haven't fully finished it yet, I'm really into it. But kind of going to the other part of the topic we were talking about earlier, what as we mentioned, kind of the concept that we find interesting about Platinum Games, now is that they are known for taking gameplay aspects, mechanics from their previous games, and they like to put them into newer ones they do, either switching them up or leaving it the same and just attaching that with the mechanics of a specific game. Like I played the new Transformers game that was made by Platinum Studios. They developed it, and they actually feature Bayonetta's Witch Time, the dodge mechanic.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because there are two sort of moments where you can kind of do that. You either do that when you just do a perfect dodge, or sometimes what you do is that when you just transform into a car, which includes like the transformers, like
Yeah.
that sound effect. They added that in. Like if you like full throttle at full speed, kind of like in Okami, you go drive for a while to just boost up. You can like press like square, you get back to rebel form, you punch him in the face, and it's like slow mo.
Oh yeah, because that's one of the mechanics in Bayonetta was you turn to like the Jaguar and you can come out of the Jaguar and like slash. You know.
Yeah, it's that trans. Oh, that's right, because that is that is actually really interesting. It's Transformers. I officially Optimus Prime is basically a witch. That's I am so down with that.
You don't think he's a Lumen Sage?
No, that's Megatron.
Yeah, Megatron's the Lumen.
Megatron's hot enough to be a Lumen Sage. I think
Yeah.
it works out. But can you were there any from your experience with Platinum games? Because I know you and I have both played many of
Yeah.
them.
Very true.
or at least have experienced them in some fashion. Is Are there any mechanics from Okami that you've noticed appear, in other Platinum games?
The obvious one would be the bloom technique you can kind of use to get bonuses in Wonderful 101. There are
Yes.
certain like dead flowers and you can circle them and they'll with your little wonderful ones and they'll like, give you an item. And I think that's a very cute sort of like, oh yeah, by the way, we made Okami. Um, I think the parry technique in Okami, which is kind of a very basic move in Okami, very like there's not much finesse to it, has really been explored upon in Bayonetta and in Devil May Cry. I think it was in there, and definitely in Revenge, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. It's
Oh
sort of
yeah.
been expanded upon, and I think it makes combat so much more interesting because you're not just waiting for, and this is a problem that Zelda had for sure. The Zelda games had where you wait for the enemy animation to go, and then you can attack and kill them, and you wait for the pattern, and it's waiting for the pattern. You feel certainly with this though more interactive, and I think Platinum Studios has really done a fantastic job of making you feel more involved with the combat.
I totally agree. Um, really, yeah. Thinking about Wonderful 101 really shares a lot of similarities as far as how they also their main focus with it is with the drawing. You draw the little superheroes into patterns to make like weapons or tools of some sort to go through, and
Mm-hmm.
it sort of addresses the issue with like combat at Okami when it was very basic, and with drawing makes it more exciting as far as solving puzzles within the combat situations. But you don't. I guess as far as using it in puzzles though, is it's not nearly as interesting as the way
Yeah.
Okami does it. If only just because of how Wonderful 101 is more. I would say it's more linear than Okami is, just by how Okami is more similar to like a 3D Zelda, and then Wonderful 101 is like a. I guess I find it more similar to even though it doesn't have the same angle like a side scroller, where you just
Yeah, I could see what you mean by that.
yeah you're progressing through a track and you can't and besides like the very end of the game when you revisit the first area you're not going to go back to some of those areas again. You can walk
Yeah.
back to them sometimes in the same like mission, but once the mission's done you can't just keep walking. Yeah, you can't do that, but it's
Yeah.
okay. Like I'm okay with that because Warf 101 is just it's a different game, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's that's just it. It's just how they honor like their. I feel some people actually complain about it, like they say it's lazy, and I don't understand that logic because I honestly I see it as just kind of honoring some of their older games, but I'm also just interested in how they change things up in such an interesting way, like the way I just mentioned with just they approach it
And
differently.
it's not the type of game that Wonderful One is. Okami is a very big world building game where are exploring and trying to find this evil and root it out. While in Wonderful 101, you're sent on a mission. You infiltrate this area, you save the civilians, kick out the aliens that are there, and you get out because you got to go do something else. Like,
Yeah,
you know?
the civilians. They also. I'm trying to remember if they have the same thing in Okami. When you see people like from a little far away, they sometimes have a little emotion. Either they're like very far away, it's like a face,
Yeah,
and you can barely
yeah.
tell. And then you zoom in, it's either just their face again, or they have like a little angry tornado, or a little something else. I think they had something similar for like civilians who are trapped somewhere. I don't quite remember. I think maybe it was just like a little like help effects or something. But I think that sort of is a comeback, but not as much as like the
Mhm.
drawing. That may be a stretch though.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that being in both games.
Yeah. Is there anything else you notice like from Okami? Maybe not just Wonderful 101?
Let's see.
Because I know that was
The,
really the
the
obvious one.
items is a reoccurring sort of thing. It's in Bayonetta. You get your different little like attach this to give you your boost. Like the one I can think of is like the in Bayonetta you get the block mechanic. That's an item you have to equip,
That's
or
right.
the rosary beads that explode when you dodge. Um, let's
Yeah.
see. And Okami, you get your like I think Okamis are less combat oriented and more like just sort of like for the game, making the game easier or more convenient. It's like you've
Yeah,
already done enough to collect these demon fangs. It means you've played the game without this enough. Now you can sort of take this shortcut.
that's right. It reminds me of like a well, again, going back to Wonderful 101, it's the treasure finder.
Yeah.
When you get that, it's like you've played through this level before. Here's the treasure finder. Here our
Yeah.
little robot's gonna point you out to where to get the treasure.
Yeah. It's like why they didn't give you the fast travel power at the very beginning of the game. You get it sort of when you've already explored most of the areas.
That's right.
So, it's just sort of like if you're like, well, I'm already three, like, I'm in a completely different area. I don't want to have to run all the way back. You can just do fast travel.
That's right. Oh gosh, there was something I just remembered and I just forgot it again. Oh gosh, I feel so bad because I just remembered one other comparison I think between like Okami and
Hmm.
well, there's one I can at least sort of. This is a sort of a stretch, but kind of thinking about the bombs in Okami, it
Yeah.
kind of I feel like in several of Platinum's games they make use of bombs in some fashion. Like you have the cherry bomb in Beautiful Joe, which comes back in Wonderful 101 in some fashion, but you
Yeah.
also have the bombs in Okami, and they all sort of feature, at least in combat, they all have a similar thing where you can use it to attack enemies. But I can't think of any other games that I don't think Bayonetta had any of the cherry bomb. I don't think they had the bombs in that, did they?
Uh, no, they sort of just all they really had was the little rosary things that explode for enemies, but it wasn't used for any puzzle mechanics.
Yeah, no. Um, although Bayonetta does some. That's one of the games I can think of which uses the moon in some aspects for at least
Yeah.
for it's kind of a puzzle if you can think of platforming as sort of like a puzzle
Yeah,
approach.
Bayonetta's no, I think Bayonetta's puzzles. The game really wasn't a very puzzle-oriented game. It was certainly more combat-oriented, almost the opposite of Okami in the sense of like what the focus was on.
Yeah,
And so the puzzles, in Bayonetta, there weren't many, and they weren't super complex. It was more like flip this switch and do this platforming section, and then in a certain time frame.
and also it kind of it makes me think back to how in Okami, or at least when it's nighttime, certain things are changed about what happens as you
Yeah,
play similar like in Bayonetta when the moon happens, all of a sudden you go fuck gravity, walk up walls, fuck you, I'm Bayonetta. But in Okami, it changes up. Like certain enemies will pop up. Things are easier to dig up. Like it's all for the benefit of you, sort of. If you explore more at night, and once you can just make night happen by just drawing it. When you draw the croissant in
yeah,
the sky, it just goes, "Yep, it's nighttime. I can go get some treasure."
I know. Which is such a convenient power to have once you finally
Yeah,
get
no,
it.
it's just the I feel like I don't know, maybe Hideki Kamiya just say the moon's very convenient. Good things happen at night. Maybe
Well,
maybe
I think it's an interesting thing that moon and darkness and well, for Bayonetta it makes sense that she has moon powers because moon has always been in most mythology associated as female. So that I think sort of makes sense that she gets her powers and derives them from the moon. And then Bayonetta, I mean, you are the sun god, so it makes sense that the sun is the first power you get, but it also makes sense that eventually you can also just take away the sun.
yeah, it's my ball. I'm gonna play with it somewhere else.
I'll tell it to leave.
Yeah, tell all the kids go to bed. It's wolf time. It doesn't. Oh, that's. Oh, of course, the most obvious thing we were talking about Transformers. Uh, Okam doesn't Bayonetta becomes a panther? Is that right?
That are jaguar, I believe, but
Yeah,
panthers are a
she
type of
she.
jaguar. So
But also flowers go appear behind her when she's in that
yes,
form.
yes, yes. That is
That
that is taken from Okami.
yeah, that's the most clear. Like oh, that's the most literally obvious thing when she
Yeah.
becomes a
Oh,
yeah, four-legged animal running
yeah.
around with with flowers behind her. Gee, I wonder what game inspired that. I bet it was God Hand.
Well, probably God Hand.
Probably God Hand.
Gotta be God Hand.
Yeah, I can't think of any Okami reference. I mean, you never played God Hand, did you?
No, I actually didn't get to play God Hand.
Oh, you did?
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't? No, because I have played. I haven't finished it, but I played a lot of it. I can't seem to remember any Okami references in that, but that's only because that game itself came out not I don't think too long after Okami, or maybe it appeared like around the same time. So I don't I so it's not a surprise like in the Clover days there wasn't much Okami referencing because I don't think Clover really they didn't have much time after that before they were told to go away. Oh, that's right. I just remember they came out the same year.
Oh, that would make sense.
Yeah, they came out the same year, and then a year later, they're like, hey guys, bad news, you're fired. Also, your company's gone. Also, we're taking your credits off of Okami for the Wii. Bye. Although interesting, and I haven't, even though I haven't reached the end of Okami, they did have Hideki Kamiya as like they listed him as director, like at the beginning of the PS3 version. So I don't
Well,
know
that's
if
good.
I don't know if his name was just listed in the Wii version, and maybe they didn't list the rest of the team, or how that works out. But I still find that sad that happened.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's frustrating because it's, like, you look at the games Capcom makes, and it's very clear that this is not a game they would make.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Sega being like, "Oh yeah, we totally did Bayonetta 2 or Bayonetta," like that was totally us. It's like, it's Sega, you didn't, you might have like funded the game and helped them like give them a house, but like, it wasn't your inspiration, like.
Yeah. Um. Did you also hear about the weird little controversy when they were releasing the Wii version?
No,
Not
I
just
didn't hear anything about
um.
this.
There's apparently at launch some
Hmm.
people found out that in the covers of the Wii version in the first release that
Yeah.
they had actually for the cover of it they just took like a JPEG from IGN's website because in the corner you could see IGN but it kind of fainted out.
That's so beautiful.
So they had to take it off the shelves and replace it to hide it. It's so embarrassing. That's how much they cared about Okami. So, oh, did we make that? Let's check IGN. I don't.
Oh man, that's like that one anime where they use the JPEGs in their background.
Yeah. The last time I've heard, really, the only time I've seen any, I haven't seen anything as bad as that as far as covers. I know there's like misspellings, like Capcom does Resident Evil, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, that when they misspelled Revelations, that period of
Oh
time when
god, I
everyone
did
was,
know they did that.
yeah, I just remember that period of time when everyone was just had like Revelations in some aspect as their subtitle, or it
Yeah.
felt that way. Like they had, didn't Assassin's Creed had Revelations as well?
Yeah, they did
Yeah,
actually.
they it was Assassin's
It's one of the
Creed
ones that it was like 2.75 or
two
2.5,
two.
one of those.
Yeah, we have to figure out the official Kingdom Hearts way to name it. Yeah,
uh,
2.75. Old man as was it Desmond or Ezio? Is
yeah,
it?
Ezio.
Yeah,
Ezio
two
is
two
the
points. Okay, Assassin's Creed 2.75. Old man Ezio remix. HD collection. Game of the Year edition. That's no Game of the Century. There you go. That's that game that I never played. I no, I just played. I played Okami. I did not play Assassin's Creed 2.75. Insert rest of the title here. No. Um. I don't. I'm kind of glad that Okami, at least the DS version of Okami, didn't have Revelations. That would have been.
Okami Revelations.
Okami did Revelations, or just most things with subtitles. I just find them really. I kind of glaze over. You have to kind of try harder. I feel like with a subtitle to get me to
Yeah.
care. Like I just finished Ghost Trick for example, and that has a cool subtitle. It's Phantom Detective. That's a cool subtitle. I would never
Yeah,
use
I
the word
mean, none of the Professor Layton games are like Professor Layton Revenge or Uprising or.
uh, Professor Layton Destiny, Professor Layton Paragon. you
Yeah,
know,
whatever.
yeah,
I think
just
there's go with, if you can't come with something original, just go with two, blah
yeah,
blah blah
two
two.
just find a way to work in the number in the title. Just, I mean, remember Fear 3 when they just had like for 3 year they'd replace the E with in Fear the 3.
Yeah, you know.
Just do that. What would you replace in Okami? What letter? What would you replace with the two? What would you think?
Uh, mm.
Would you I
I
feel
would
like,
I would go
yeah,
with Okami the Second Coming.
the second coming.
Yeah.
I would just do Okami Okami.
Okami Okami.
Yeah, just Okami Okami.
Yeah.
That tells you everything right there. Um, just two Okamis. Oh, this is the second. But I guess it's the third. This would be if they do a sequel. Would that be the third one then?
It would. Well, it's possible you could do like not count Okami Den as like an official sequel.
Yeah, if Hideki Kamiya and Platinum go into, they just like lean up and go. By the way, that's not canon. Fuck you. He'll say fuck you on his Twitter. He'll ban like he'll find the devs of that game and just ban them from his Twitter.
Probably.
He'll ban them from his
Probably.
Twitter. Just like he'll tell them.
He'd friend them and then ban them.
No, they'll go like, why do you hate us? You'll just go ask your mom.
Oh god. Stop it. No.
He should show up. He showed up in Wonderful 101. That should be a trend. He should show up in more of his own games. I need to see him in Okami. I need to see him in Star Fox. He needs to be a furry.
Oh my god, yes. Just
He
like
should
have like one of the pilots be uh like Hideki, I don't know, like salamander or some shit. Like just some weird ass
if
animal.
there's I don't know, I can't think of any puns with his name, but it'd be funny if there was like an Okami dog and as one of the like the pilots. What if that was Star Wolf?
That would be so beautiful.
Just that an optional, if they had like Smash Bros, just optional shader. Just go like, okay, regular wolf, dark wolf, Okami wolf. I mean, if Wolf shows up in Smash Bros, I mean that'd be nice.
I would love Wolf to come back. I'm surprised he hasn't.
Would you
He was
would
one of
you
the favorites that I played in Brawl.
would you want Okami in Smash Bros?
I would rather have the Wonderful 101 team or Bayonetta.
You would rather have those two. You don't
Yeah.
think Okami deserves
I mean,
recognition?
I think Amaterasu could be in Brawl. I just think that those two would be more interesting and fit better.
I could see. I can also see just because she made her choice. She chose Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Notice how that game isn't around anymore.
That's true.
Now that take a hint. Maybe they just thought like, oh, she's got the poison touch. Everything she touches dies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it didn't make enough money at release, so
and then even the expansion version, Ultimate
oh yeah, I forgot
Okami
about
didn't stand a
that.
chance. So maybe that's why Hideki Kamiya was just asking. It hasn't announced anything. Like maybe they're like, oh wait, everything Okami touches dies. I mean, when did Okami then come out?
Let's see. I want to say 2010.
When didn't the 3DS launch a year later?
Yeah, but I can't remember if it was 3D or if it was DS or 3DS.
I mean, like the 3DS, I think launched in
Oh.
2011. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it came out in 2011.
Interesting how just a year later, after the Okami game, the DS dies.
Yeah, well,
Hmm.
that's when it was released in America. It was released in Japan in 2010. Doesn't change what you said though, but
Yeah,
yeah.
doesn't change. No,
Hmm.
Okami
Clear failure.
is it's like
Doesn't make tons of money. New get something new.
it's like the Poltergeist curse. It's the Okami curse. Just
God.
instead of like people though, it's just like it's just businesses that die or
Oh my
products.
god.
That's the Okami. That's the Okami curse. I'm sure, although I don't know. I mean, do you think the Poltergeist curse applied to the remake, or did it just kill everyone's careers?
I think the issue was that the remake for the for the Poltergeist.
For the Poltergeist remake, do you
I
think
think I
that
think
do you think it'll
Poltergeist.
kill
So
them or
Poltergeist
will
is
it
like an
kill?
interesting movie, but to be perfectly honest, I don't love the Poltergeist. Like it's not like on my top 10 horror movies of all time. You know,
Yeah,
and I think they made a remake. They didn't have any of the heart and originality that the original had, and it was just a bad remake for a movie that honestly most people don't think about that often.
I feel like people think about Poltergeist. I mean, there's a lot of different talks about Poltergeist as far as just their director discussion. Like, did Steven Spielberg actually direct it, or because he's not listed on there, but a lot of people think he did. And I think even though I haven't seen Poltergeist myself, maybe this is if I ever do drunk movie retellings, I'll finally maybe that's what I should do. I should do a podcast for where people get drunk, and I can finally do all the things that I've never read or watched. Like I can finally watch Poltergeist. I can finally finish American Gods. I'll just go through everything, and then then I'll be broke, but at least I will have experienced all of media. That's
It's true, and you'll hit a singularity where you can just,
I'll become the
uh,
2001 baby. Like I'll just be in the sky and I'll just go. I have consumed all media. Okami, please exist.
will it into existence with your singularity powers.
I will my singularity. As the baby, I'll have the drawing power. I'll draw like a circle around the earth and it'll fix everyone. Just
That would be so nice.
just fix it.
Yeah.
Just draw a circle. I mean that's the first step to drawing Kirby. You draw the circle. That's why Kirby's so perfect. It's the it's the Okami system. You draw a circle to start off something. Things work out pretty well within that system. It's just when you call your game Okami is when everything goes wrong.
Yeah, or you get made by Capcom.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah,
Well,
because
unless your name is Street Fighter, maybe if
yeah.
Okami what do you think the Okami curse would happen in Street Fighter if Okami just like stood up on her paws and just started punching Ryu in the face?
Don't think she necessarily has to do that, but
I
I would be
mean,
curious to see Amaterasu in Street Fighter. I don't think it would fit the theme though. I think it would be very out of place. I think it'd be like, the Street Fighter that's released on like the iPhone is when she would appear in something like that.
do you think that's just it's
For extra DLC.
because I was just thinking like if Street Fighter is gonna have I mean not Street Fighter if Mortal Kombat's gonna have like all these horror movie villains like other
Yeah.
fighters should just take that lead and just go let's just put anyone why not.
Might as well, to be
I mean,
perfectly
Smash.
honest.
It's then Smash Bros. It's like, did Cloud appear in anything Nintendo? Uh, Kingdom
No.
Hearts Chain of Memories. I think that's the only connection, but really he's in his Final Fantasy VII garb, so no. So Okami should just be Mortal Kombat X. She did you hear? There's the alien from Alien is in it. That's so weird to say. The
That's
Xenomorph.
so weird, because I figured they would have had Predator before they had.
No, they did. Predator was in first.
Oh,
Yeah,
jeez.
Predator
Because
was
I
in
know they did the
first.
whole, like, Freddy and then Jason.
They
And then.
did. Yeah, they have Jason's in it, and then the guy from Texas Chainsaw.
Oh, Leatherface.
Yeah,
Yeah, what the
Leatherface is in
fuck's up
it,
with
and
Mortal
apparently,
Kombat?
like the xenomorph isn't just a xenomorph; it's the Balrog's xenomorph.
Oh.
So it has the spikes come out. So that I was just like,
I.
yeah. So I'm just like, yeah, just get Okami, have the Okami xenomorph. What would I guess you would draw a circle and then a little circle in there? Yeah, that's the Okami xenomorph.
Oh
Oh
my
god, that'd
god.
be the Okami morph. That maybe that would finally kill the Alien franchise.
Yeah, finally.
Yeah, at last, that's all you have to do to kill these long running franchise. Just put Okami in it. It's just the Okami curse happens. That's so sad.
Um,
But I you know there may be hope, because if as you remember the my first episode of this podcast was Psychonauts, and Psychonauts 2 got announced as of this week of recording. So
yeah, you could do it.
do you believe in yourself? Do you believe can we everyone I want everyone listening to hold your hands out and say we want Okami uh, HD HD Remix 2.5 uh, Hideki Kamiya edition. Ask your mom. Ask your son mom. Everyone raise your
Yeah.
hands up. We're
To the
gonna
Sun Mom.
so we're gonna ask your son mom. we're gonna ask Sun Mom to give us Okami. So everyone, just raise your hands for a brief moment. Let's have a moment of silence. Moment of silence done. Okay, our message is sent. Okami, please happen. I did not notice your announcement, the PlayStation Experience today. So, chop chop. Well, I expect it. I expect it in my office next week. Do you have anything else to say about Okami, or just Okami, or anything?
I just hope that people that do listen to this that haven't played it really give it a try. I think that a lot of people are gonna find that this is just one of those games that you just have fun playing it. It's just even in the moments where it's kind of you're like, oh, why am I doing this? Even where maybe the moments you're frustrated, you find that just the entirety of the game is just this enjoyable, unique experience that you just don't get from anything else.
I totally agree. Um, I guess with that said, if there's nothing else to be added on, do you have any plugs or recommendations you'd like to shout out about yourself, or maybe anyone you know?
No, I don't. Yeah, I have friends on Twitch, but no, there's not really. Follow me on Twitter, I guess. I don't know.
What do you want to share your Twitter with the
Jazzy
world?
Fresh, I think. Is that
Jazzy
what
Fresh. Everyone, go on,
it is?
become Jazzy Fresh's friend on Twitter.
Oh yeah, follow me and my very few tweets that I do, but I
Very
promise
few
they're good.
good
I'll tell
tweets.
you this: if I tweet something, it's because I really cared about it.
That see, you can't get that from anyone else. You can't get it anywhere else. Of course, my Twitter account is you can follow me at Hendrix Trog. If you're anyone else, you might be interested in recording an episode, maybe a drunk retelling,
Yeah.
like Steve here did this week. Feel free to message me on Twitter. We'll chat about it. With that being said, that's the end of Tipsy Talk, and now for music cue right here. Yo, this is the end. This is the end of the podcast. No more content, no content, just no content in sight. Yeah, sorry about that. There's just nothing left here. I can't find anything else to say about these video games here. And I'm sober too, so this is just a big old waste. Big old waste to go any further. Besides music, we don't have any much left, so after this, bye.